All right, before we get to Keith, this is what storm cleanup looked like this morning in Auburn. It's a pretty similar story for a lot of communities in Maine. As soon as that storm and the snow is taken care of, another one is headed our way. I would imagine, Keith, that we get the freezing rain coming tonight.
Yeah.
Any little remainders of snow are just going to turn to ice themselves.
They are. However, if you're willing to wait, they'll get vaporized tomorrow. So that's
Yeah.
So it kind of depends what you were. Because I did like a moderate cleanup snow
Same.
job today, knowing like
Same. It's all going to get washed away.
We're going to get there. Yeah, we do have some pockets of freezing drizzle there right now, moving through the Acton area and Parsonsfield, kind of along 25 here, and then down into the Sebago area. So this is all, according to my weather watchers at least, that have emailed me and messaged me, this is hitting the ground as freezing rain. So that will continue over the next few hours from southwest to northeast. The models don't have as much freezing drizzle as there is right now, so that's worth noting. There's a little bit more out there that in reality than the models have going through. Pockets of freezing drizzle and rain tonight continue off and on. Probably gets a little bit heavier here later tonight, 10 to midnight over southern and western Maine as precipitation fills in. And by tomorrow morning, we still have a few pockets that could be dealing with some freezing drizzle. A lot of us, though, will have changed over to rain by tomorrow morning, and everyone changes over to rain by mid-morning. After that, it's a rainy and windy day. The heaviest wind will be later in the evening, which we'll talk about in a second, but we'll see downpours through the day on Wednesday. A rumble of thunder can't be ruled out, especially about midday into the early afternoon. And then we're going to drive a squall line through, and within that, we're going to have about 30 minutes to an hour or so to mix down our strongest wind gusts. And you can see it in that shaded red and orange as it drives through. I think this model's maybe a tiny bit fast, but let's say 8 to 10 over southern coastal Maine, and then 10 to midnight into the mid-coast, then midnight to about 2 a.m. Into down east Maine. So it's that brief period of time. We've had storms like this, unfortunately, so often. You know what I'm talking about. We'll see heavy burst of rain, and that will be the moment where we either mix these winds down to their full potential or we don't, and we end up with lighter winds than forecast, which I think everybody could live with, especially when this is the wind forecast that we have. Gusts of 50 to 60 miles an hour in the shaded orange here. Gusts to 60 to 70 miles an hour into the mid-coast, down east, and I did stretch that right up into Bangor. We talked a little bit yesterday about how when the wind direction is right, Bangor is basically right along the coast, meteorologically. So you can see that wind is right up the river there. And so I think the winds will be just as strong in Bangor as they would be right over some of these islands, really. So we'll have potential for power outages. And this is a product called the Power Disruption Index. It's an algorithm that takes into account a couple of different things: soil moisture, wind speeds, foliage situation, and it spits out what it thinks is likely for power outages. And we have a moderate risk of power outages, and watch it just go up the coastline right with that squall line. So if you go through that squall line and you still have power, you're probably going to keep it. And that's kind of the finite period of time that comes through, 10 to midnight here, and then midnight to 1 or 2 in the morning. In addition to that, we do have the rain, about 2 to 2.5 inches of rain. There will be the potential for some minor to moderate flooding in the foothills and mountains. It will not be, though, like what we had last year at this time in the mountains, which was really quite catastrophic because we don't have that snowpack that says primed to melt. And the other thing, and this is big, is it's less than half the amount of rain than what we got last year. We had some 5 and 6 inch rainfall totals December 2023, if you remember. I do, because this is kind of my job too. So that's good, and I know people are worried about that. I think so going forward for most of us, Coco, it's going to be a power outage thing. How many do we end up with? And there's there's this little pendulum that I've noticed over the years in forecasting in Maine where 5 or 6 miles an hour on the upward direction, all of a sudden it becomes major power outages. If you're gusting to, in the low 50s, you'll have power outages. But if you get up there right closer to 60, then all of a sudden you see those numbers ticking up quickly. So that's, unfortunately, we're not going to get it within a few miles an hour. So that's the part we have to kind of find out when the squall line comes through.
And I would imagine all the power crews are already staging.
Yes, they're very aware, yeah.
All right, thanks, Keith.